I want to start where Congressman Kinzinger left us last night. All of the public hearings have been these taut narrative cliffhangers. They have also served to dump into the buckets of acts and criminal intent around the crimes that they have already revealed they think Donald Trump committed: obstruction of an official proceeding, defrauding the U.S. government, and seditious conspiracy. And I wonder, Daniel Goldman, if the effect of turning around this narrative that Trump did nothing and revealing what he did do. He did call senators. He did bar photographers from the office. He wasn't doing nothing. He was doing something. It just wasn't stopping a deadly insurrection.
Oh, this is very important evidence to show his state of mind. You know, in conspiracies, you will often put in evidence long after the object of the conspiracy was completed to show state of mind, to show consciousness of guilt, to show a cover-up, because it's such damaging evidence of the actual conspiracy and the knowledge that what you were doing was wrong. Well, let's just take a look at what we don't have. The fact that the photographer was barred from the dining room, the fact that we don't have the calls, the presidential daily diary, now even the Secret Service texts, and we need to find out more about who authorized the deletion of those texts. But that goes a very long way to show that somebody is hiding something, and there's a reason why somebody's hiding something, and DOJ would need to get to the bottom of that. But it's very damaging evidence of his state of mind and of his intent. But I do just want to take a step back, and I know I'm the prosecutor here, so I'm supposed to be focused on his criminal culpability. But it is just mind-blowing to me that the President of the United States sat there for 3 hours watching his own supporters invade the Capitol in a violent way to try to stop a congressional proceeding, that he poured gasoline on the fire to encourage them to go after Mike Pence, his vice president, whose life was in danger. And he sat there with popcorn watching it on television, and the commander-in-chief did nothing to stop it. This is not so much about a criminal accountability, which should come later, but in many ways, this is even worse. This is a depraved individual who just sat there watching his own vice president suffer real danger to his life, and he did nothing to help it. I know you want my legal analysis, Nicole, but I just can't get over that fact.
It's a perfect place to turn to. I mean, I think that Jon Karl, your book and your reporting covers so much of this terrain, but it is still shocking to see the evidence, the novel witnesses, the witness with the voice shielded, describing what Dan Goldman is alluding to, that the vice president's detail, according to a national security official whose identity was protected by the January 6th committee, said he was aware of calls coming in from Pence's detail, which were like the 9/11 airplane calls. It's the only modern sort of historical reference where they were calling and asking people to send messages to their family, to their spouses and children, because they thought they might die.
And the actual audio that they had of some of the radio traffic of the Secret Service of Pence's detail, stuff that was preserved by the Secret Service and turned over to the committee, where you hear the Secret Service agents, you hear the anguish in their voice and saying that the mob was a mere 5 feet away from where they were, and they were clearly fearful if they didn't move him out quickly, they wouldn't be able to move him out, which then prompted those calls, the anguish calls to family members that their lives could be in danger. Look, I think this was an incredibly high-impact hearing, because although we knew on January 6th that Trump did nothing to stop what was going on, here you saw the detail of what he was doing. You mentioned the calls to senators, the calls to Rudy Giuliani. Two separate phone calls. Think about that. 2 separate phone calls to Rudy Giuliani while his supporters were rampaging through the Capitol. While they were inside that building, he was calling the person that was leading his effort to overturn the presidential election. And then, Nicole, to me, maybe the single most chilling detail is Donald Trump's final words before he leaves the West Wing that night to retire to the residence, when he turns to somebody who I understand was the valet. They didn't identify who it was, just said a White House employee.
Oh, wow.
But I'm told it was his valet. And he said, Mike Pence really let me down. So after all of that, after all of the world saw that he saw take place on January 6th, his single takeaway is that Mike Pence let him down.
It is an unbelievable window into his state of mind at the end of a deadly insurrection, and it stands in such stark contrast to some of the other never-before-seen footage of the lawmakers, Michael Steele. We saw, I think they were in Mitch McConnell's office, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell and Speaker Pelosi and others huddled in there with the acting Secretary of Defense trying to find out when the Capitol would be secured. And what's amazing is the range. It was 5 to 6 hours, in the words of the acting Secretary of Defense. And Chuck Schumer's question was, is it days, 5 to 6 days? That in the moment, they didn't know when they could resume their responsibilities as lawmakers.
No, and you know, just to pick up on Dan's point about where this is right now, tying it into the point you just made, are we now clear that Donald Trump didn't give a damn about being president of the United States, and certainly didn't give a damn about being president of this country, didn't care about the country? Are we now better Republicans? You understand now what happened? Because when you take the evidence that has been presented and you juxtapose it up against what Republicans did in the moment, right? In the moment, Nicole, they responded as legislators, as frightened citizens, as Americans in the moment. And then to subsequently, even to this very week, still promote and say, I would vote for this man again. If given a choice between Donald Trump and a capable, competent candidate for president, I'll take Donald Trump. What does that tell you about where we are? And what has this committee put in front of the country in such a stark, naked way that you can't turn your eyes away from? And in that signature moment at the end, what the capstone on the day, walking into the residence, the sun is set, the fires are still burning up on the Capitol, and the president's response is, damn, that Mike Pence really disappointed me. So I don't know what more clarity we need. We have his mind. The mens rea, we understand it now, was I don't want to say I lost the election. After everything we've been told, everything we know, I don't want to say that. Republicans, McCarthy, you told him, and he's still saying, I don't want to say it. So what's your response? Okay, we just won't talk about it, Mr. President. I mean, this is where we are. And we've got an election coming up, and people got to look at this.
Yeah, I mean, look, Pete Strzok, I want to show you Congressman Raskin makes a similar point in terms of the mystery solved. As Michael Steele saying, we got it. We got him. Let me show you that.
We solved a mystery tonight, I would say. I mean, Sherlock Holmes had the story where the dog that didn't bark was the key to solving the case, and here was the president who didn't act. And that was the key to solving this case. And this is like, I was thinking about it tonight, kind of a moral trial of the president, where the whole country just gets to use their common sense and figure out what happened. And there can be no question that Donald Trump was at the absolute center of the conspiracy to overthrow the election and to assault our democracy.
So he's talking about a moral trial. It's obviously very different from a criminal trial with the FBI and DOJ running the investigation and prosecution. Have you seen enough, though, to be convinced that an investigation into Donald Trump should be open?
Oh, no doubt. In investigation, there's no doubt in my mind that there should be active investigation going on by the FBI, by other investigative components of DOJ and the U.S. government. You know, that is a necessary first step before we even get anywhere near discussing whether or not elements of a crime are met for DOJ to bring charges. But I think we are, for several months at this point, well beyond the place where a good, reasonable debate within the halls of DOJ involving the senior leadership of the FBI and others could look at the facts, could look at the things that Donald Trump has done that have demonstrated on the record all the evidence that's been collected, certainly among the conspirators, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, people like Rudy Giuliani. Remember, Rudy Giuliani, DOJ has had his devices. They seized them via search warrant for over a year now. So that material presumably has been gone through a filter team, has been exploited. There is little doubt in my mind that there is more than sufficient evidence to have opened a case on Donald Trump. The question is, of course, you know, what worries me is that, you know, when the New York Times reporting that Wyndham, who's the prosecutor who's kind of heading up the entire investigative effort, expresses some frustration about not being able to sort of mention Trump's name until the past few January 6th committee meetings, where suddenly that seems to break the silence in the upper levels of DOJ. But I do take heart. Attorney General Garland's statement this week, he was very certainly in a you know, kind of restrained way, filled with gravitas, but he said in unequivocal terms, this is the most significant and largest investigation in DOJ's history. And there had kind of been some hedging about what it was or wasn't, but his statements made it very clear. They understand exactly what they're looking at. And he was adamant that, you know, he's been listening to some of the criticism because he took on these questions about whether or not DOJ was looking at it appropriately. But I think he signaled very clearly they are well aware of what is involved here and that they are examining every aspect of all of this, and they're not going to stop until they get to the end of it.